Morning, Chairperson. Morning,
How are you
members.
doing? And prayer. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. Colleagues, thank you very much for joining our virtual meeting. My name is Isaac Mbulelo Sileko. I am the standing committee chairperson for local government, and I will just allow the members to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Matlodi Maseko.
If it's possible, can we see your face? We are sure it's you, Member Maseko.
Sorry.
Okay. Welcome, member.
I'm on
Next
the,
one.
I'm on the phone, so it doesn't want to allow me, or maybe
No,
technology is
no, no.
working.
No, noted, my senior. It's acceptable.
Okay.
It's fine.
Thank
Can you
you.
go to the next one? I see member Glass is also here. Okay, thank you very much.
Morning, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you guys. Thank you.
Mhm.
Now, thank you, colleagues, for that. John, do we have any apologies from other members?
No other apologies, Chair.
Is it? Okay.
Nothing.
Okay. What I'll do then, can we ask the departments that are here to introduce themselves? I'll give our provincial local government department and then national treasury. And then from there, if Salga is present, I will also give them an opportunity and also give the AG an opportunity as well to introduce themselves. So in other words, all our guests, I will give an opportunity for them to introduce themselves. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members. I'm Albert Rwengu from the Department of Local Government, Western Cape.
Welcome and thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Hakeem Masali from the Department of Local Government, Western Cape.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Ngosi Batatu from the Department of Local Government, Western Cape.
Good morning and thank you. Next one in line, colleagues.
Morning, Chair and honorable members. My name is Tobelan Chingila from the Western Cape Provincial Treasury.
Morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. It's Faiz Ali from the Provincial Treasury.
Good morning, welcome. You only have one representative from a department from Provincial Treasury.
We have two, Chair. I'd already introduced myself to Lanting.
Okay, so you're fine. Thank you very much. Can we ask the AG to introduce themselves, please, John?
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. My name is Sangita Callan. I'm the Business Unit Leader for the Western Cape Auditor General of South Africa. I've got my deputy here. I'll allow him and my stakeholder liaison managers to introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, and good morning, Honorable Members. My name is Thomas Mamoge. I'm the Deputy Business Unit Leader in the Western Cape office. Thanks.
Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, colleagues and Honorable Chair. My name is Tsepo Mohlomi, Auditor General Office. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Can we move over to Salga to introduce themselves, please?
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. I'm Gert Kombrink from Drakensberg Municipality, representing Salga on the provincial platform.
Thank you and welcome.
Morning, Chair. Morning, Chair. This is Khalil Mullaji, the Provincial Director of Operations. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. Paul Swart, PSC member. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Louisa, your sound is off.
Louisa, we only see the curtains. We don't hear your voice.
Oh, okay. My sincere apologies, Chairperson. I'm saying Chairperson, morning, Chairperson, and the members and the colleagues and Salga delegation, all protocol observed. I'm Loiso Njamela. I'm responsible for IGR in Salga Western Cape office. Thanks very much, Chairperson.
Good morning and welcome.
Maybe I'm too short, Chairperson.
Yeah, noted. So, colleagues, is everyone that is on the platform given an opportunity to introduce themselves? Because I don't want to leave anyone behind. Okay, colleagues, then I'll also have our PO, our procedural officer, Johan Kutsia, on the platform, and then I will have then our supporting staff as well. They are also helping us with this meeting. Colleagues, this is an official meeting of the Provincial Parliament, and it will be on virtual. Please make sure that if you are not speaking, mute yourself and switch off your camera. Then if you have an opportunity to speak and you have enough data, please switch on your camera so that you can see your face, so that you can be audible enough. And then if you want to speak, please raise your hand. And then if you can't use that function, please use the chat on the side, and then you will be recognized by the speaker. And then please, colleagues, then if you have any direction, the ICT will definitely assist you so that you can be part of our meeting. Johan, from the side of the department, is there any apologies that we should note?
Chairperson, no, I did not. And I see Albert Them are here to represent the Department of Local Government.
Okay, cool.
Chairperson, just one last thing. I see Mr. Hardin from Provincial Treasury has also joined the meeting, but he never had opportunity to introduce himself, but he did join the meeting.
Can we allow him to introduce himself, please, John?
Good morning, Chair and members. Aziz Hardin from the Provincial Treasury. I'm also the Western Cape Accountant General, and I'm happy to be on the platform with you this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome. Then, colleagues, now that all the formalities has been dealt with and everybody has introduced themselves, I am not going to waste any of your time. Then we'll go straight to our presentation from the Auditor General on the audit outcomes of the 2021-2022 financial year. And the focus mainly is on the 30 municipalities within the Western Cape. So, AG, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. We have a presentation that was shared with the committee in advance, and I will be taking you through some of the salient aspects of the outcomes, with obviously, as you said, emphasis on the ones that had not fared well. Chair, if you allow me, I'm going to switch off my camera so that it will just allow members to concentrate then on the presentation. What is being put forward to the committee today is the outcomes of local government for the financial year ended 30th of June, 2022. It also indicates the status of any material irregularities as at the 15th of February, 2023. We tagged the outcome and overall view of the local government outcomes this year as an overall net regression, but with a positive story around clean audits. Our tagline for the year is ineffective monitoring of compliance by leadership has affected the audit outcomes, and I thought I'd start off with that. Tsepo, you can move on. So just a reminder around our vision to be recognized by all of our stakeholders as a relevant supreme audit institution that enhances public sector accountability, and this has been our vision for a number of years now, and we continue to pursue that through our mission. Our mission is that the AGSA has a constitutional mandate, and as a supreme audit institution of South Africa, we exist to strengthen our country's democracy. And we're doing this by enabling oversight, accountability, and governance in the public sector. We do this through auditing, and we hope that this will then thereby build the public confidence that we hope for. Honorable Chair and honorable members, I'm going to then move on to the next slide, which talks about gives a visual around the accountability ecosystem. And in this last 2 years, we've made a concerted effort to take stock of all of the role players that play a critical role when it comes to ensuring that entities perform at the level that they ought to be performing. The mission ultimately is to make sure that we sustainably and efficiently shift the public sector culture through the insight, and the insight is the work that we do on our audits, is use that information to influence the critical stakeholders within the accountability ecosystem, and enforcement, and utilize our enforcement where necessary through the issuing of MIs. We can't do this alone, and this is where we say that each stakeholder within this accountability ecosystem has a mandate and a responsibility, either legislatively or morally, to dive deeper into ensuring that public sector accountability is activated. Ultimately, this is a collective responsibility, and we do want to make sure that everyone around the table is activating that responsibility. So, Honourable Chair, I just wanted to take stock of the importance of that accountability ecosystem. So now over to the overall audit outcomes. As I've mentioned, it is an overall regression. Sepo, you can move on to the next slide. It is an overall net regression. It's not that's significant when you look at the clean, so the unqualified with no findings and unqualified with findings. There's been some movement in that space, but I think the regression has definitely come through from those that were qualified in the prior year to we see that 2 has regressed to an adverse with findings and disclaimed with findings. Now, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, if I can take you back to the previous year where the message was really that there was a firm leadership tone. We found a strong control environment that continued to contribute to these positive outcomes. We emphasized to the new administration that they should continue in this vein to ensure that they sustain these positive outcomes, but also ensure that they drive improved service delivery. We also talked about the audit committees and the impacts around their oversight and their governance. Again, their linkages to focusing on effective financial management discipline to then support the good financial health at most municipalities. So we also then, from an overall outcome perspective, if you look at the message, we've got 21 municipalities that achieved a clean audit. This encapsulates 71%, so it's 21 out of 30. And the good news here is that you can see out of the entire expenditure budget of 85 billion of the province, they do make up 94%. So that is in itself a good story. We've got those that are sitting in unqualified. We had 5 last year. We have 6 this year. So that is where we had the one regression from a clean audit down into the unqualified with finding space. And then we've got the 3 municipalities previously that were qualified, which are now sitting as regressed. So Beaufort West municipality is still sitting in the qualified with finding space. We've got Lanesburg that is sitting in the adverse with finding space, and we've got Cunnaland, which is sitting in the disclaimed space. If I can maybe just concentrate on the regressions from the clean audit space to the unqualified with findings. The main reason for this was around material non-compliance that related to procurement, but legislation related to procurement. The ones that regressed from qualified with findings to adverse and disclaimed, and even Beaufort that stayed in that space, was around the lack of leadership. There was a no sound internal control environment, or even an attempt to improve that environment. And furthermore, the findings that we issued had not been crystallized into an action plan that would have been monitored and implemented. In the last point in this, in the clean audit space, we did see that we had 3 regressions around clean audits. It was Central Karoo District Municipality, Cedarburg Municipality, and Matsikama. Cedarburg and Central Karoo District Municipality regressed because of their procurement-related legislation, and Matsikama Municipality regressed due to non-compliance with the expenditure. We find that here the regression is related to the political environment and the instability at the council level, which had permeated into the administration of the municipality. And I think the important message here around what ought to be done is that at least attention needs to be given to these compliance areas, that they continue being monitored, and with specific emphasis on the SCM space. You can move to the next slide, Tsepo. So the next slide gives a provincial view, but from a district perspective. If I can start maybe perhaps with the city of Cape Town, which has now achieved a clean audit outcome from an unqualified with findings in the past. In the past, there was, for a number of years, there was reoccurrences of material non-compliance findings which related to contract management regulations. And the improvement in the outcome was due to the municipality implementing credible action plans, which had almost a proactive system of accountability. So what they did is they took our audit recommendations and they implemented those. It improved the control environment, and ultimately in this last year, we've seen that it's prevented the reoccurrence of these compliance findings in the contract management space. I think the tone of the leadership together with the city manager has really made sure that the environment is improved. There has also been quite a strong tone around consequence management in the irregular expenditure space as well. If I can concentrate on the 2 districts that had sustained the clean audit outcomes in totality, was the Cape Winelands district and the Overberg district. This sets off with that good tone that has been set by the leadership of the municipality. We find that the key positions such as your municipal manager and the CFO positions are stable, and that these positions are then adequately supported and capacitated by a competent workforce. It's important that these strong control environments are maintained to continue keeping these positive outcomes. It is also good to note that in these municipalities, even matters that we consider immaterial are corrected when we do our audit, and it shows you their commitment towards clean administration. We also found that the audit committees are quite effective in these spaces. They are active, and there is good oversight over the financial and performance reporting processes. If I can move on then to that Garden Route district, overall, this is where Kanaland has regressed. So overall, it has had that one regression. It moved from a qualified opinion to a disclaimed, and a disclaimed opinion is where we could not provide an opinion. We've experienced the limitation. We've had repeat significant internal control deficiencies that we've reported at this municipality. And in some instances, it's actually further deteriorated due to a lack of commitment by leadership. We find that there are key positions that has been filled by acting and has been vacant for a period of time. This definitely has an impact on the tone that is set at a leadership level, and ultimately also the political instability has bearing on this. When it comes to the administration of the municipality, we have found that there has been a deterioration in implementing and monitoring the policies and the procedures around sound financial management, as well as performance reporting processes. If I can move on then to Central Karoo district. So the Central Karoo district, the regression in this district was around the area of non-compliance, which is attributed to the leadership instability at administrative and political perspective. This is where Laingsburg is in this district. They've regressed from a qualified opinion to an adverse opinion. And an adverse opinion is where we say that we do not believe that the financial statements fairly present, and they do have a number of compliance findings as well as performance reporting findings. Laingsburg had been qualified for a number of years, so they had failed to then address some of the significant issues that we've identified in the past, and the main root cause around this was the lack of skills. There's been significant weaknesses in the control environment, and as I've mentioned, that lack of skill and capacity of their staff complement has really impacted the ability for them to have credible reporting being done on their finances and their performance. We find insufficient oversight over implementing and monitoring of the control environment, as well as the policies and the procedures. And as I've mentioned, we've had repeat issues. So we look for action plans, and we haven't found significantly credible action plans and implementation of our audit recommendations from the prior year. So hence we find the recurring outcome, recurring issues. The good story in Central Karoo is that we do have Prince Albert that has improved to a clean audit outcome, and we attribute this to the appointed CFO, who then implemented and monitored sound internal controls, which then enabled for them to submit their financial statements on time, improve on its actual quality, and we do hope that they'd be able to sustain this outcome through this leadership stability. The West Coast District, lastly, was able to sustain the clean audit outcome, but there are two municipalities that regressed in the area of compliance, and this was due to political and leadership instability. Honorable Chair, I can then maybe move on to the next slide, which just gives you an overall outcome snapshot in the focus areas. So just to hone in on quality of financial statements, we had a 100% submission rate of financial statements according to the legislated deadlines, which is definitely an improvement from the prior year, where we had a couple of municipalities that had not submitted by the deadline. We do find from an overall perspective that there are good financial management controls that are embedded in the environment. And that, as I've mentioned, comes from that stable administration. We had overall, if one looks at it, we've got 27 unqualified opinions. So that says that the financial statements are credible. and that we did have one material misstatement that was adjusted in that financial statements that then finally gave them that unqualified opinion. And those that are struggling, leadership instability is what I talked about. And the deterioration of the control environment is what is really coming through when it comes to financial reporting, and where we say that the financial reports are not necessarily credible. For performance reporting perspective, overall, the performance quality of the reports remain good. 27 municipalities did not receive any material findings, so they have done well. And the reason they've done well is that they do implement regular reporting and not only reporting for the audit processes. And you can see their reconciling controls are working. For those 7 municipalities we believe had material corrections in their space, for them to be able to prevent that from happening, they ought to implement daily controls that will allow them to then pick up the matters and adequately address it and not rely on the audit process. I talked about compliance being one of the areas that has impacted in the overall regression. This is where we saw actually 3 clean audits losing their status due to material findings around procurement. We had HR matters, the prevention of irregular expenditure and expenditure management. Again, I want to emphasize that compliance monitoring controls are definitely important to implement. So it will be important for the municipalities to relook at these and really improve the discipline around it. From a financial health perspective, we do believe that the financial health for 21 municipalities remains positive. They are good. We've got 3 municipalities, which is Beaufort West, Kannaland, and Cedarburg, which in their financial statements have indicated material concerns around their going concernability. And then we've got long-term financial sustainability and the ability for the municipality to deliver services are impacted due to the large portion of their billings being irrecoverable. And I think it's for them to be able to reduce that debt bill, the debt amount, so that debtors amount, so that they can at least have the funds to fulfill their financial service delivery responsibilities. The green block at the bottom just reflects on some important messages around the key leadership tone. I think I've mentioned that leadership tone and stability has allowed for those positive outcomes. And I think our call has been that PT and local government department do continue intensifying their support for those underperforming municipalities. From the legislature sector, I think what is important, legislature does look at our general report. You do have the MEC of local government come through and present the provincial outcomes. What we're looking for is a level of robust engagement and deliberation to see what actions are going to be taken and if those actions can be turned into commitment. And then thereafter for the oversight structures to then continue monitoring so that they can at least enable that level of improvement. We looked at HR management this year. The important message we were looking for in the space was to say what level of accountability is pushed in the environment so that at least we could find improved performance and improved outcomes. And we found that there were senior managers that did not have performance agreements in place. There was policies and procedures that were actually not monitored and measured to evaluate the performance of staff. And ultimately, as I mentioned, it does not hold individuals accountable and manage their performance. And ultimately, that does come through when it comes to the reporting and the audit outcomes. We wanted to concentrate on the IT environment. So we had prior findings that weren't addressed around the budget constraints and vacancies due to budget constraints and vacancies. We do see that there is adequate automated control for water and electricity meter readings, leave management and changes to supplier banking details, which is a good story. And that we did find adequate IT expenditure management in the environment. To the next slide then, Chair, just concentrating on the performance planning and reporting. On the left-hand side is just us taking stock about the important cyclical movement of planning, budgeting, and reporting, those responsibilities that sit with the institution around plan, do, check, and act, and ultimately how it contributes to the greater plans and frameworks that are in place. From our testing of performance reporting, and especially around planning of indicators and targets around service delivery, we found that performance indicators actually not well defined and to some extent not verifiable. We did take note that City of Cape Town Metro had not implemented the standardized indicators in line with National Treasury Circular 88. However, they did then report on it at another level. It was it was the reporting around the findings around the reporting, where we received financial performance reports, and after our audit had identified matters and findings, after adjustment we saw an improvement in that space, and you can see a number of municipalities, it's about 4 that improved in that space. We reflected on the insights, the root causes and the impact, and we said from an overall perspective, as I mentioned, the performance reporting is good. We do have a level of material misstatements that are coming through on the APRs, but we do believe that that can be improved by the daily control that I've mentioned. There is that further insight around municipal regulations, which only refers to the delivery of services to households, but there's no clear guidance on whether households include informal settlements or only formal settlements. And I've mentioned that City did not include the Circular 88 outcome indicators in the 2022 top layer SDBIP, but it was, however, included in the Directorate SDBIP reported on the performance of these indicators, right? And they've given that feedback through to National Treasury. The next area that we did work in terms of our insights is that we conducted the audit on the delivery of infrastructure. And it was, and you'll see in the areas audited on the right-hand side, we looked at the municipalities, Drakenstein and Overstrand, George, Cedarburg and Stellenbosch for water infrastructure. And we looked at the City of Cape Town for delivery of housing projects. We found from an overall project deficiencies that were left unattended, that there was inadequate project planning, record keeping as well, ineffective monitoring and project milestones and quality of work performed. There was inadequate asset management, and there was in some instances underperformance by contractors without consequences. And we reflected on these to say what would the resultant impact be. And this is where we found delayed completion of projects and even handover of, say, houses to the beneficiaries. Project sites were demobilized indefinitely. There was increased project costs because of the time that it took. We found the quality defects as well. In some instances, we found asset deterioration due to delays in finalizing the project. We found project objective was ultimately not met, and in some instances, irregular expenditure was incurred. In our general report, we do reflect on some of the projects, specifically around the Lamberts Bay desalination plant that is by Cedarburg local municipality. It was built about 9 years ago to alleviate water shortages in the community, as it was included in the IDP. But as it stands now, the asset has actually deteriorated in quality, which now requires further work to be done for it to actually be completed. Suppose we can move to the next slide, then just the concentration around, or the slide around the irregular expenditure and consequence management. We've seen an overall reduction in the irregular expenditure occurred from over $1 billion in the prior year to just $500 million, just $500 million this year. The closing balance is still sitting over $1 billion. And I think we do have a level of incomplete reporting on irregular expenditure because we do have around 30% of the municipalities, 9 of them, which are still investigating to find out what the full amount is in terms of irregular expenditure. And then at 2 municipalities, we did qualify them with regards to the amount of irregular expenditure. If one looks at the impact of the irregular expenditure that has been incurred, we found that at 19 municipalities, there was a breach of the 5 procurement pillars, which amounted to about 330 million rands. We found irregular expenditure where no value for money was actually obtained at 4 municipalities, which was just under $1 million. Other non-compliances, example like payment not properly approved, was found at 18 municipalities. which came to about 160 million. And then the impact not as yet assessed at 10 municipalities was about 210 million. This ultimately shows that in some instances, market prices were not tested adequately, which may have resulted in higher prices being paid, and also the negative impact on the government's socioeconomic objectives of empowering previously disadvantaged individuals, where we found that preference points were actually not applied or incorrectly calculated, and the incorrect supplier being awarded. Ultimately, a number of irregular expenditure matters have not yet been dealt with. You'll see that about 49%. And I think it's important that we do note that the consequence management needs to be completed. This is where our call to action to say to the impact to say that make sure that you continue investigating these irregular expenditures and closing it. And I think to some extent, we find that the instability in the accounting officer and the CFO positions on some of the municipalities does contribute to these areas not adequately being closed. If I can then just reflect on the material irregularities in the next slide, the material irregularities that have been identified could have been prevented by basic disciplines and processes. The material irregularity process, we highlight internal control weaknesses, and ultimately we track improvement to prevent reoccurrence. And I think the ultimate objective is to make sure that financial loss is stopped, it's recovered, and processes are improved to going forward so that you don't have these similar instances happening. We've issued 4 material irregularities on non-compliance, which resulted in an estimated financial loss of 15.3 million. We have not identified any substantial harm to public sector institution material irregularities or misuse of material public sector resources. The important point to note is that no action was actually being taken on these 4 matters until we issued the notifications thereof. The actions that have been taken by the auditees, we know that financial loss that is currently in the process of recovery is around 9 million. Now, if one looks at what has been ultimately the impact of the MIs that have been issued, we had 2 of them where internal controls improved to prevent reoccurrence. We saw that responsible officials that were identified and disciplinary processes were completed when some instances are in process, and also that where supplier contracts were being stopped where money was being lost. 2 of these material irregularities are at Beaufort West municipality, where one was around retail and industrial properties. Their basic charge was being underbilled. And the second one was where an employee was remunerated in excess of the remuneration policy. Those 2 sit still not yet resolved. There was 2 then issued at the City of Cape Town. These material irregularities were resolved at the time of closing of the audit, and we found that the city had initiated the necessary consequence management and legal action to recover the losses. They had then implemented controls and strengthened the environment to significantly reduce or even stop the losses from reoccurring. We did report these 2 as resolved at the time of our auditor's report of the 30th of November. Honorable Chair, my last slide talks about then activating the accountability ecosystem. And when I started, I talked about the ineffective monitoring of compliance by leadership, which impacted the audit outcomes. We've got 4 call to actions that we've been communicating with the province and various role plays in accountability ecosystem. Our first one is to continue to lead by example and embed a culture of compliance and adherence, and to ensure that consequence for accountability failures are effected swiftly at all poor performing municipalities. Second one is around enhancing performance reporting. So this is around the basis of saying majority of the municipalities in the province have clean audit outcomes. And clean audit outcomes, we do know, create a good foundation, a very stable environment to make sure that the service delivery is improved, which ultimately impacts the lived realities of the citizen. And we believe that our call to action to say that where we come to performance reporting, where it measures the output and the quality of the services that are being delivered, will ultimately have an improved environment of service delivery and will improve the lives of the citizens who live in that area. Our third call to action is around the impact to timely investigate the irregular expenditure, and I touched on this from those that are coming in the prior years, and ultimately for them to hold officials responsible for the transgressions, because we still want to make sure that there's an adequate culture of accountability that is driven and it's continuous. The fourth call to action, the first half of it is around local government and provincial treasury to develop a plan to address skills shortages at the poor performing municipalities, being Beaufort West, Cumberland and Laingsburg municipality. We do know that there is an HR action plan that's put in place at Cumberland, and it's good to, it would be important that this be monitored regularly. Provincial Treasury to then continue the support when it comes to the regular monitoring of their budgets to prevent instances of municipalities with unfunded budgets, because we did have some instances of unfunded budgets. And I think there is good support that PT is offering, and it's just the continued support from that perspective. The call to action are definitely key areas that are identified by us that we believe would sustain and improve audit outcomes. And as we look to shift the municipalities into a better space from doing the basics to doing good and impacting ultimately the lived realities of the citizen, we believe that this call to action will get the province to that state. Thank you, Chair. That's my presentation. We'll take questions.
Thank you. That's comprehensive presentation, and I see there are members that are itching to dig into the presentation. Can members just indicate if they would like to pose a question? I see Member Marie, Member Maseko, second one. And I would also, before you go, Member Marie, I would just also like to welcome Member Cameron Dagmo. I saw that he joined us a little bit late, but welcome. So I'll give over to you, Member Marie, then Member Maseko. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, my first question, or maybe before I start, I just want to say thank you very much to the AG's team for the presentation. It was extremely comprehensive. My first question, though, is just on the ICT compliance. If they could just talk us through how they set those requirements to determine whether the departments were meeting the obligations set against them. And then I remember a line on there being a net decline. If that could just be brought down into layman's terms, please, in terms of what do they mean by net decline overall. And then, yeah, those are my questions for the round. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Maseko, and after you is Member Dagmo.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I need to echo sentiments of my colleague about the comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much from the AG. Just few questions, and the first one, it will be, I mean, on your mission, you talked about the enabling oversight, and I want to find out, in enabling oversight, does it include you upskilling as the AG or empowering the MPECs in the municipalities? Because we are in a like a stakeholder oversight ecosystem, being the MPECs, the public accounts in the provinces, and usually we engage with the Auditor General to always get more information from our side. But the impacts, it seems like they are not on the same level that maybe the provinces we are, that they definitely identifying also their responsibilities that they have to play in their oversight role. The AG as an enabler for an oversight, in my mind, I tend to believe they have to play a certain role to that. So I just want to find out if they are doing that, and if not, why are they not doing it? Another one that I want to find out is the issue referring to the last financial year on the using the consultants versus the CFO. And I know that the AG indicated that was a little bit concerned when coming to the municipalities. I want to find out the recommendation and talking to the municipalities, like your Beaufort West, your Canaland, your Cedarburg. Did you pick up the same problem, or is just the issue of the instability of the leadership in those municipalities? And also, if I can ask, their debt book versus the debt collection, being the municipality services collection versus those municipalities borrowing from the financial institutions, how are they performing there? And if there's no leadership in those, if there is leadership instability in those municipalities, how is that going to improve, or what is it that can help those municipalities, or recommendation from the AG moving forward? Because we can talk about the leadership instability year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until and infinite, until. So I want to find out if we have to tweak that to make sure that the officials are the ones that have to keep the municipalities running and making sure service delivery doesn't get to be impacted. Is there a way that you see that it can be implemented to deal with it? And the last one, I think, if maybe a little bit we can hear from the AG, is there any municipalities that you foresee that you are going to issue consequence management in the form of the debt letters? And then if the debt letters are, you're going to issue them, which are those municipalities? Looking at what you highlighted time and again was the leadership instability in those municipalities. And also the non-compliance part of it, who's doing those non-compliance in those municipalities? How do we correct that it doesn't happen? Because the financial Bible is there for supply chain management, and the financial principle that is guiding the officials to do the right things most of the time. So I'm just trying to find out what are the loopholes exactly that if we have to do an oversight, or the MPEC have to do an oversight, what is that they have to look at adding to whatever that already is being done presently? Chair, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Maseko. Member Dagmo.
Chair, thank you. Can you hear me? Chairperson.
I can hear you, member.
Okay,
I can hear you, sir. Continue.
Thank you. Greetings to the AG's office and to members. Thank you very much for the presentation, and apologies for joining slightly late. Excuse me. I think one of the key issues that comes out in regard to this report relates to the capacity of both the political leadership of the municipality as well as the officials sorry, and then very importantly, the local impacts in regard to ensuring that funds raised or transferred are spent in terms of the issues of service delivery and providing for that community. Now, one of the issues related to the CFOs, I'm sure the AG's office is aware of the fact that there have been amendments to the local government legislation in regard to the qualifications and experience required of senior managers, including CFOs. And obviously when that legislation came into effect, there were some people that had already been employed. Now, I just want to ask, is it the responsibility of the local municipality to, for instance, say where there is a CFO who does not meet the criteria but had been previously employed, is it the responsibility of the municipality or that particular individual to demonstrate that they are now in a process of upgrading their qualifications, for instance? Because I think, we've welcomed the stricter criteria around appointment of officials, but the issue is, how does the AG's office view the responsibility of an incumbent to then improve their qualifications in terms of the new amendments to the legislation? That's number one. And then secondly, in regard to the impacts, I think one of the honourable members raised this issue. The question of actually, we know that, for instance, now the chairs of MPACs are, in essence, full-time posts. But I think, there's very often a situation where the councillor appointed to that committee might not have any particular experience in regard to finance, budgets, and so on. I just wanted to ask, what is the Auditor General's view in regard to the current initiatives of local municipalities as well as the Provincial Department of Local Government in terms of actually training those particular councillors who oversee the MPAC? And then lastly, Chair, just in terms of the presentation, I'm not sure if you could ask the responsible person just to put up the slide which indicated that there was a figure 0 in regard to monies that had actually been recovered. I'm not sure if it's possible to share that slide on the screen, but I think we've had this engagement before, that part of, the late Auditor General, Mr. Makwetu, Kimi Makwetu, and the audit team, I think, campaigned quite hard to ensure changes to the legislation which would ensure the ability of the Auditor General not to simply report, but to also follow up in regard to reporting matters for further investigation by, whether it's the Hawks or whoever. This is the one. Thank you so much. So, in terms of that slide, it says there that a significant portion of 2021 has not been dealt with. So there you have a figure which says 0% money recovered or in the process of recovery. So, and then the next one, talks about 740, if I'm correct. I'm sure that's a provincial-wide figure. 740 million that's been written off. And then, further, 750 million not dealt with. So that basically brings us to the 0%. So could we just have a little bit more information as to, if what is the target in regard to money recovered? Is it 49%, like say, not dealt with? Okay, if 300 million has been condoned because there's been investigation and so on, and then you have 0.74 billion, in other words, 740 million that's been written off. So how much, and this is my question, how much does the Auditor General envisage? What is the target for recovery when it says there, okay, there's not recovered at the moment in the process of recovery? So is it 100 million that the Auditor General is trying to recover? And arising out of this set of audited reports, has the Auditor General's office recommended any, has the Auditor General recommended any action to be taken, criminal or civil, against any official from any local government in the Western Cape? Thanks.
Thank you, members. AG, I'll give over to you to give some answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I hope I've captured all of the questions. I'll start with Honourable Member Marie when it comes to the ICT compliance areas. And she asked that we talk her through how they've set the requirements. Now, from the IT environment testing perspective, we do look at the general control environment around financial and performance reporting. And when we do look at that, we see what is sitting in an automated space that impacts the reporting processes. We do look at the ICT governance environment as well, that then says, listen, is there sufficient processes in place to manage the IT environment in terms of user access, in terms of changes, your general access, those kind of things do need to come through. So when we do that type of testing, then we do it according to the processes and policies embedded in that environment. We do, but ours is specifically linked to then what is going to be ultimately reported in terms of performance, performance and financial reporting. The requirements that is set from a municipal level is the responsibility of the municipality. Ultimately, the policies that they adopt and craft and what they put in place would be done through the systems and the control environment that they've established therein. Ours is purely reporting then to see whether these environments are sufficient to support adequate and credible financial and performance reporting. When I talk about and explain, I guess, the net decline, maybe Tsepo, you can put up the audit outcome slide that I can maybe just explain from that perspective. So the audit outcome slide, you'll see on the top right-hand corner, we talk about the movement from the previous year. So we had an improvement of 2 audit outcomes, but we had a regression of 5 audit outcomes. So from a net perspective, there's a net decline in the environment. So the 2 improvements were the improvements of City of Cape Town and Prince Albert into the clean audit space. But when the regressions were that we had the 3 auditees that had moved from the clean audit space into the unqualified with findings space, which I mentioned, it was Matsikama, Cedarburg, and Central Karoo District Municipality. And then there was the Kannaland and Lanesburg that moved out from a qualified with findings, which is the purple zone, into the pink and the disclaimed zone, which was Kannaland disclaimed and Lanesburg. So that is where the net overall net regression comes in and the net decline comes in. I hope that I've explained it. From Member Maseko, the question around our mission and enabling oversight, specifically around the impacts and how the impacts are empowered. We do take our messages to the impacts through our, so the individual messages of the audit outcomes are taken to impact, and it's unpacked from what are the areas that need improvement. We do a root cause analysis, which then gives direction to say, this is our recommendations, which we believe are directly related to the root causes. Secondly, what we do is that we do then take it to the impact, I think it's the chair of chairs impact session, where we take the outcome of the province collectively and we unpack it in a similar fashion that we've done so today in a slight level of detail around what action they ought to take. any SALGA initiative in making sure that we empower CFOs through the CFO Forum and the Forum, as well as the impacts, we do take that opportunity to then go to them and help them understand the complexities around, say, for instance, preventative environments versus detective environments when it comes to the control environment. And I think there are a couple of initiatives that maybe perhaps SALGA can also talk to that they do run for them. And we hope that that gives them the sufficiency to be able to ultimately act on from a recommendation perspective. The question around the consultants, where we talked last year around using of consultants, and I think AG also talked about it in the current year. In the Western Cape, we did not find that consultants were being utilized to the degree where there was no value that was achieved or obtained from them. We found in the current year that there was about 45 million rands that was utilized as the total cost for financial reporting consultants. And that we see that there's about 24 municipalities overall that have utilized consultants in this past 5 years. And the nature of the work that the consultants are doing is for reporting and reviews of the financial information. So we find that the CFOs and the teams are preparing the financial statements, and even then the consultants come in and conduct the reviews thereof. There was some use of consultants for asset management, and then some use of consultants for other reporting purposes. When we unpack the reasons for the usage of the consultants, we did find that some of them were because of, say, for instance, a lack of skill. So it's a specialized skill that does not necessarily sit in the environment. And that then they do need to bring in the consultants for that type of skill, and we do see that there is a bit of recurring appointments. So I think our message here is to say that if there is the usage of consultants for specialized services such as asset management, valuation of assets, maybe looking at the useful lives of assets, perhaps looking at large infrastructure projects and its assets and componentizing it, valuation of, say, estimates such as provisions, that the municipality should consider the cost versus benefit of actually having that skill being transferred internally. And I think we've also given that call to action to PT to also support in that space. When it comes to the poor performing municipalities, we did find that they did utilize consultants, and that the work was done around reporting and preparation of financial statements. And you could see that the poor performing municipalities then still did not attain the desirable audit outcome. And we rooted those reasons down to perhaps a level of inadequate or even a lack of records and documentation, which you can see in the municipalities that attained the disclaimer, and also poor project management, where the accounting officer doesn't apply the correct level of discipline in managing the consultants such that the performance is and outcome is ultimately achieved. And I think that responsibility lies solely with the accounting officer to ensure that there is a level of benefit that is attained from that usage of the consultants. The next question around the debt book and their ability to ultimately, the impact, I think it was an overall financial health sort of question around the poor performing municipalities. We do have overall a material concern. I mentioned at 3 municipalities, and of those 3, we've got Beaufort West and Kannaland, which are the ones with the poor outcomes. It's going to be important that there is some level of support that is done from a budget perspective, the funds that are coming in, so the managing of the debt book, as well as the ability to then plan and budget adequately so that service delivery needs are met. What we feel is that, yes, the leadership instability does create an environment that doesn't allow for adequate managing of the financial sustainability. And it's one of the root causes around it. And I think the recommendation here is to be ultimately overall is that there needs to be some level of stability that is created in the administration of the municipality that are not performing well. Secondly, to ensure that there are sufficiently competent staff who can manage the environment through the implementation of the policies and the procedures that will ultimately allow for good discipline around financial management, which would then also include the debt book. The question around consequence management and debt letters, Honorable Maseko, I assume you were talking about whether we've issued a certificate of debt to any municipality, or do we foresee that we're going to be doing so in the province? We have not reached a point where we have issued a certificate of debt. I think for holistically as an organization in the country, we have not yet issued a certificate of debt as yet. What where we've gotten to in terms of the province is that there is one of the material irregularities that have been issued to Beaufort West, where we've now included recommendations in the auditor's report, and that is us going through the processes of the MI, where we issue the notification, we give the accounting officer an opportunity to respond. When the accounting officer responds and we believe the response is not sufficient in terms of the recommendations that we've issued, we then solidify the recommendations in the form of issuing formal recommendations and including it in our auditor's report. Our next step would be to say that we will then evaluate whether our recommendations are heeded. We give a deadline with regards to that, and ultimately, once that is evaluated and we believe the accounting officer has taken the right action, we close the material irregularity. If we believe the accounting officer has not acted according to the recommendations, we then issue remedial action, which is remedial action is considered binding. And then it moves on into the certificate of debts phase. So right now we are only at a recommendation phase with one of the MIs. Overall, Honorable Maseko, around the non-compliance environment, I think it is around the discipline of monitoring the compliance and understanding the complexities of what adherence to compliance requires when one is actually implementing it on the ground. So the compliance aspects that we found is related to procurement and contract management. And even if you look at the unpacking of the environment where we talk about the 5 pillars of procurement, it is important that there is adequate monitoring done at every level and every step when it comes to procurement, including contract management. And I think there is that discipline that's also applied when one also goes through expenditure management, which is where we've identified the non-compliance areas. If I can move on to Honorable Dagmore's questions. Ultimately, Honorable Dagmore, when it comes to the amendments to the legislation that is closely linked to the qualifications of the CFOs, it is the responsibility of the municipality to ensure that the key critical positions, such as the CFOs, is filled with competent people. And if there's criteria that needs to be applied to ensure that these positions have the criteria is met by those people, that it would then have to be built into their recruitment environment. If those positions are already filled and the people do not meet that environment, I think from our perspective, it is important that the municipality take responsibility and see what action they ought to implement to get to the desired state. I think I've sort of covered the question, Honorable Dagmore, around the MPAC and the initiatives. There are training initiatives, as I've mentioned, and I think I do mention that I think maybe Salga can also help and PG can also help in this regard. The irregular expenditure, Honorable Dagmore, around not recovery. The AG's office does not give a specific target around recovery. What we do is we want to make sure that we activate that we see that the processes have been activated by the accounting officers when it comes to investigating the irregular expenditure, also driven from the aspect of the impact, making sure that all irregular expenditure that has been identified or potential instances of irregular expenditure that have been identified are adequately investigated, that the root causes are identified, and if there is officials that have transgressed legislation investigation that it is they are ultimately taken through a disciplinary, that there is the level of consequence management. The recovery bit is also part of that investigation and that process for the accounting officers to determine whether they in fact can recover the funds. And I think it comes down to what the root cause is behind the irregular expenditure. So you'd find that there could be instances where they could be processes or within the municipality that brought about the compliance or non-compliance of a piece of legislation that brought about the irregular expenditure. And these kind of instances, you would say that it was the municipality's processes that did not adequately pick up these matters. What would you enhance? Perhaps the monitoring. Now, the recovery of that would then be reflected upon by the accounting officer. And I think it is definitely the responsibility of the accounting officer to be able to go through the requirements of the legislation and see what is then potentially recoverable. So from our perspective, we advocate for a preventative environment, so an environment where policies and processes are adequately monitored and amended if there are gaps that have been identified. And this can only be picked up through proactive and very disciplined control monitoring processes that are embedded in the environment and not necessarily only brought about, under certain circumstances, that they are embedded as a daily control within the environment that then ultimately picks up these types of matters. And then our desire would be that you would not have irregular expenditure in that instance. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I hope I've answered all the questions.
Members, I saw Member Class hand up. Member Class, are you ready to ask your question? And if not, then colleagues, I'll open up for follow-up questions for the second round. Is there any uptake? Member Maseko?
Chair, it's not a question, it's just to maybe request that when the AG engages with the MPEX, it will be nice if we can get the invite also just to be observers, or if we can also be allowed to be in that space to be part of that engagement. It will be appreciated, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Before I give an opportunity to Salga, since there is no follow-up questions, I will just use, and you must just bear with me, AG, that I'm also just going to have a few minutes asking some of the questions. My concern, AG, is that there is 2 municipalities within the province that is under Section 139, subsection 5. Where there's a FRP that is supposed to be implemented. And what is worrisome is that the department is doing its obligation in terms of Section 154 of the Constitution in supporting these particular municipalities. But what is worrisome is that even though assistance has been granted, has been given to one particular municipality, which is Kanaland, what we see in front of us is that we find that they've regressed to are currently assisting that particular municipality. So my question to you, what do you think is the problem when departments are doing what is expected from them in terms of the Constitution and in terms of their role in terms of supporting, but we still find that there is no improvement. Instead, we find regression. And secondly, AG, there is, if you go to slide number 9, we talk about the issue of consequent management in terms of the UFIWs. And what you are saying that is that MPEC did not investigate the UIFW expenditure. And I'm going to ask this particular question because some of us are advocating for more funding towards local government. But logic tells me if you cannot account for 5 cents, how can I, as a responsible parent, give you 10 cents or 10 rand more if you cannot account for a 5 cent? And what is worrisome for me is that you say that MPEC did not investigate the UIFW expenditure. So in such an instance, there is people that are responsible for the MPECs, your MPEC chairs, which is politicians. If you come to a finding that says you did not do what was expected from you as an oversight body, what happens to such a person? Do we leave it at that, say, MPEC, you failed to investigate? Because when they did not investigate, it tells me that they took their report and then it went to council. And council condoned a decision from MPEC that was not well thought of, where they did not apply their mind, and they condoned. Because now, if you look in terms of your slide 9, you're talking about 3 billion that has been condoned. What is it that we can do as members of parliament to make sure that decisions of condoning UIFW expenditure is where it is thought of? It's not just a compliance exercise. Those are my 3 questions. Then I want to go to the provincial department. I can foresee that the audit outcomes of next year is going to give us another regression. Why do I say that? The majority of councils currently in the province, you'll find that they consist of 4 or 5 role players that are governing in those councils. Which means there won't be any stability. So what role is the department going to play in making sure that whatever is currently happening can be stopped in terms of councils using deviations, using regulations to perform illegal things within the councils? Those are the outcomes that we are going to be dealing with next year, this time. That Council A has used deviations and it amounts to a certain amount. And that decision was condoned. And there was no proper investigation in terms of that. And people are just going to go scot-free. What is it that we can do as legislators to make sure that people are held accountable and there is consequent management? That we don't just engage with the presentation from the AG and then we accept it for what it is. We have oversight bodies that is supposed to play a role. They deal with deviation reports on a quarterly basis. They deal with investigations. They don't apply their minds. They send into the recommendation to council. Council don't apply their mind. They condone. As a result, municipalities are left poorer than before. Those are the kind of questions that I need answers, AG, and to the provincial treasury. Thank you. And I also see member class is online. Member class, you can ask a question as well.
Thank you, Chairperson. I want to ask the first question about MPEC. The role of MPEC is for the oversight and check that every money is spent correctly. If the money is incorrectly spent, the municipality, they said the audit is true, but they said that they take aside because the spending of that money is not reflecting true to what is supposed to go to the audit. What is the audit do on such manner? What is their role in order to make them account to bring back into the audit that expenditure has been spent or that tender has been rolled on, while there was no such that their roll on must be in the audit? That is the point number one. Point number two is that what the audit team role when such things happen, like this one I haven't explained. Make an example. There is a clean audit, and then the others, there is no clean audit as such, but the audit doesn't see anything that it's wrong, but all things are not being done correctly as the audit is supposed to continue to audit. So my question on them is that, what is the role when something is not submitted to them? Because you cannot say the audit is true, but nothing submitted or is clean, but nothing submitted to the audit team. What is the role of the audit team in such cases? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Class. AG, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So I'll start with your questions, Honorable Chair. When it comes to and you talked about the regressions in the environment and what really is the issue around the regressions in the environment. So the way I see it is that in terms of the province, there's two pockets in terms of the regressions, and I'm bucketing them into two pockets because of the root causes. The one pocket is around the discipline to make sure that our monitoring controls around compliance with legislation. So what legislation requires us to do in terms of procurement and contract management, as well as expenditure management, that the auditees to some extent did not apply the necessary daily discipline that would make certain that they pick up compliance, non-compliance, and remedy it through their processes, which ultimately made them regress from a clean audit to a unqualified with findings audit. Now, it's important to note in that space that their financial statements are considered to be credible. So they've received an unqualified audit opinion on their financial statements. They are credible. They've received no significant findings when it comes to performance reporting. So we are comfortable that those are also credible reports that have been put together. Ultimately, that we're only saying that in those compliance areas relating to procurement, contract management, and expenditure management, that there is some level of controls that ought to be refined or refreshed and re-enabled into the environment, and that we do believe that the accounting officers will be able to do that through adequate action plans, a reflection of those spaces, and be able to recover from those sufficiently. Then it's the poor performing municipalities, your 3 municipalities which are sitting in unfavorable or audit opinion spaces. And the one which is Beaufort West municipality is sitting in a unqualified space, and specifically that one is that, sorry, it's sitting in a qualified space, is specifically that it's clearly understood where the issues lie, and the discipline of making sure that an adequate and credible action plan be put together with the areas that we've identified that have shortcomings, and that this action plan is adequately monitored. And I'm going to talk about the other two municipalities where we have the Laingsburg as well as Kannaland, which are struggling with a proper control environment. And what we see there is that there is this level of, I would say, a lack of knowledge or even stability at the MMM and CFO level to allow for the credibility of financial statements to come through, the credibility of performance reporting to come through, and they are struggling in terms of monitoring their compliance areas. The important bit around that is to ensure that if there is any instability that is created at a council level, that instability cannot filter into the administration. And it is very, very key that the MM and CFO positions that are sitting at a vacant space, or we have people who are acting, that be solidified and stability be brought into the environment so that the correct tone can be implemented throughout the system with the people who are there to say the policies and procedures must be implemented. We must monitor it, and you'd be able to remedy the environment. So the important message there is to say that it is important to then take an action plan to really then implement that, but you do need to create that stability in that space. The second bit is about making sure that when that stability is created, that the control environment then starts being evaluated for the weaknesses that have been identified through the audit process, and give an opportunity for the environment to be improved or controls to be implemented that will ultimately improve the outcome. So all of that means that I would be able to then prepare credible financial accounting records, credibly follow through on my performance, on my service delivery. I can verify it. I have documentation in place, and I think that is important that be created. Honorable Chair, you talked about the consequence management as well, and that around impact investigating. And I think the legislation is clear that it is the council's responsibility to investigate unauthorized, irregular, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And that responsibility from council can be delegated to impact. I think our message for the audit comes through to say that we do see that there has been a decrease in irregular expenditure being incurred. However, we do see that there are irregular expenditures that are coming from the past that have not fully been dealt with. And our call to action is that the impacts ought to take the necessary action. And if we find that impacts are not doing that, then the council should take those necessary actions to then investigate that irregular expenditure, such that the root cause of it can be identified, that the people who have been responsible, the responsible officials, the persons can be identified, and the necessary steps can be taken to ultimately recover it. Now, if one considers that maybe perhaps it might be a skill gap or an understanding gap when it comes to impact and councils, we would recommend as an audit office that the impact and councils be trained and so that it is very clear and understandable as to what their responsibilities are in terms of legislation. The second bit would be to say that maybe perhaps a level of support that comes through from the legislature sector, legislature, to say ultimately we do understand that you would have had this level of irregular expenditure. If then you would then look at the action plans that have been put in place and ultimately follow through and monitor that these action plans are committed to and are implemented by those councils and impact, and then purely comes from a support and assistance perspective. I think from Honorable Member Class, which talked about impacts as well and calling to account. So from our perspective, we do audit the compliance with legislation, and we identify compliance with key legislation. And one aspect of it does come through in terms of consequence management. And this is where we then, if we do identify that matters have not necessarily been investigated, that they've been investigated and no action has been taken, we do elevate those for action through our audit process and in our audit findings. Honorable Class, we have not had any instances where we had limitation and a limitation is where information was not submitted to us on an audit that has received a favorable audit outcome. The audits where we have received limitations on were the poor outcomes, which we find the disclaimer audit, which is purely an outcome indicating we've gotten a limitation, we could not audit, and we would not be able to express an audit opinion on the financial statements, including the performance reporting, and to a greater extent could not audit compliance, or we could audit compliance and we identified significant non-compliances in that space. And then also through the adverse space, we do get instances where we could get some information, we could audit it, but there was a gap in terms of limitation and we could not audit it. And that came through on that adverse opinion, which is then Lanesburg and Cunnaland. So we do not have any clean audits on which we had limitations. We could ultimately audit all of these areas. I hope I've answered those questions. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, AG, for those questions. I see Member Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just want to find out maybe the department, provincial department or treasury can respond to this, that a municipality like Canaland, why are we not actioning section 139? Because I looked at it and I saw they do have bloated political offices staff, and like the AG indicated that their collection rate also is not okay. Their infrastructure, we went for an oversight there, and then we could see that their bulk infrastructure is really almost on a collapse state. Now, if that's the case, because also when you look at their underfunded budget that they passed, they don't have money. They budgeted more than what they do have, or even as their collection is not going to cover everything that they say they budget for. Now, if you have a municipality like that, why the section 139 is not actioned in a municipality for the sake of service delivery and for the communities in those municipalities? Chair, that's all from me.
Okay, thank you very much. And Provincial Treasurer, if there's something that you want to say, you're more than welcome to respond to some of the issues that I've raised, or maybe some of the comments that I've made. And also in terms of the intervention, in terms of section 139, that Member Maseko feels that we should, or the department should actually consider. I will give the Department of Local Government to answer into that. So I'll give the two departments an opportunity to respond if there's a need for them to respond. Then after that, then I will give SALGA an opportunity to raise issues of questions to the AG. If not, then they are more than welcome also to raise, to add their 2 cents of comments in terms of what has been said during this particular engagement. Thank you. I'll start with the Provincial Treasury, then I'll go to...
Sorry, Chair.
Honorable Plus.
Can I raise the last question, or you can give me another round of the question?
Okay, before I go to the department, can you ask that question then? Continue,
okay,
Member
Chair.
Class.
Okay, Chair. I will continue now, Chair. Chair, my question is that a clean audit do not always equate to good governance. They simply mean a compliance with key legislation, and that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Clean audit do not always have a link to the improvement of human life, eradicating of poverty, and rendering the basic service. So, for example, the background of this clean audit, the Audit General still found the Western Cape municipality to have incorrect authorized expenditure to tune of 130 billion. And his expenditure does not outside the purpose of the vote of the main division, and it also include over expenditure. So this means that it is an easy to find money intended to provide the basic service in poor communities, such as provision of houses, end up of paying for unnecessary services, leafy suburb, just because of they are not looking upon this audit. But the main question is that what did they do about that 130 billion that they had spent in the municipality? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Glass. Member Kayla, I see you also want to raise a question.
Yes, thank you. I think there was an assumption made in the member's previous question, and on that assumption, I would like to ask the Office of the AG, how do they feel that clean audits contribute to better service delivery and then therefore better living outcomes for our residents? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Member Marie. I think that what the question that has been raised by Glass, it's I think everybody would want to listen to the response from the AG in that regard, whether you can link a clean audit to a clean governance or to better service delivery, because there's a belief that a clean audit doesn't necessarily means that there is sustainable services delivered in a particular municipality. It's just a compliance exercise. It just means that you have your basic accounting principles in place. Yeah, so I'm also interested to the response. So I'll give the AG to respond to those few questions. After the AG, then I'll go back to PT, and then after PT, I'll go to LG. I think yeah, that will be our last engagement. Thank you very much, AG.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So, Chair, I wanted to start off by saying that ultimately our audit covers three focus areas. We provide an opinion on the financial statements. We elevate any significant matters around performance reporting of municipalities, both from a usefulness of that performance report as well as relevance thereof. And corrected in member class indicating that we test compliance on some key legislation and not all legislation. It correctly is, so we do not say that a clean audit equates directly to good service delivery. What we say is that a clean audit is important, and it positions a municipality to transparently communicate to their communities on whether and when their needs will be met through accurate records, which also enables informed decisions. So where we find a clean audit, we say that municipalities have managed to institutionalize their controls, their systems to actually plan and measure, monitor and account for their finances and performance, and to stay within the rules. And it's often also a very solid foundation for service delivery. So it's something that is desired because what it shows you that it reflects that the municipality has managed to achieve the basic disciplines when it comes to financial reporting, when it comes to tracking their performance reporting, as well as some and the legislation that actually allows those spaces. And for us, we believe that if one still continues to desire to attain a clean audit and also maintain a clean audit, it definitely provides a good foundation, a good base to actually build on service delivery. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, AG, for those answers. Can I give over to PT? Provincial Treasury, is there anything that you want to say from your side?
Thank you, Chair. This is Mr. Aziz Harding.
Okay, Mr. Aziz.
Provincial Accountant General. There's perhaps a couple of things that I want to address, starting with one of the questions that member Cameron Dugmore raised, and one of the other members. In terms of impact is a subcommittee of council, and I personally have been involved in the training of impact together with SALGA and together with the Department of Local Government. So the impact members have been taken through what are their roles and their responsibilities in terms of evaluating expenditure or irregular expenditure or any unwanted expenditure. This training takes place throughout the year at specific times, and there's even a National Treasury circular that specifically informs the impact members what their roles and the responsibilities are. It is within Council's responsibility to ultimately accept the recommendation of impact, and that is after impact has done an investigation on the irregular expenditure or on the fruitless and wasteful or unauthorized expenditure. So in my view, the impact members have been empowered. Can we do more? Certainly we can have more training sessions, but ultimately it is the responsibility of the impact members to make sure that they understand the rules and the regulations around the condonation of, or the recommendation for condonation of irregular expenditure. I think what the members also need to understand is that not all irregular expenditure results in losses. Not all irregular expenditure is as a result of fraud or corruption. Sometimes you can have irregular expenditure because some administrative part of the law hasn't been followed. A simple example would be a municipality may have to get 3 quotes for a particular transaction and they only receive 2 quotes, and on that basis they take the best out of the 2 quotes. That in itself will result in irregular expenditure because the law requires there to be 3 quotes. Every of the municipalities have been taken through the supply chain processes, and I think many of the reasons why the irregular expenditure is incurred is because there is not yet a fully automated system to take care of supply chain. The Provincial Treasury has been inundated with training both service providers as well as municipal officials, in specifically the procurement managers in municipalities. In terms of contract management, there has been an extensive program that has been rolled out by the Provincial Treasury to deal with contract management, because that is the area that in prior years that the AG has raised as matters of concern. You will also note that sometimes that the irregular expenditure is still under investigation, because these investigations isn't something that can be done necessarily within 30 days. In the departmental space, an investigation can go up to 90 days, because first you have to identify, is the expenditure in fact irregular? And if it is irregular, can somebody be held accountable? And then there's a particular process that needs to be followed so that the right people can be brought to book. In terms of the interventions, Chair, you will note that the Provincial Treasury has already instituted some interventions, especially in the CKD region. If there is a reason that we have not implemented an intervention, the full scale of an intervention, it's because the municipality has perhaps met the legal requirements for there not to be an intervention. Provincial Treasury has on an occasion, or Department of Local Government has on an occasion intervened in a municipality. Then the matter has been taken to court, and then the court will overturn the intervention. Specifically in the revision of the MFMA that's currently underway, the National Treasury saw it fit to change the rules around intervention so that an intervention can happen much earlier and not wait until the roads or Rome is burning. It is to immediately take steps when there's indications of intervention. Now, there are a few triggers that will result in an intervention that needs to be taken. One of those triggers is an unfunded budget. And if Council, after Provincial Treasury's assessment of the budget, still hasn't managed to fund their budget, there is a intervention, not the full-scale intervention, but there's an intervention to help and assist the municipality to get to a funded position. Another trigger that will result in an intervention is in the case where a municipality perhaps gets a disclaimer of audit opinion, and in an extreme case, an adverse opinion. So what Provincial Treasury has done, if the committee requires so, we have studied the general report of the Auditor General, and we will present to the committee specifically based on last year's commitments, what the Provincial Treasury has done for the ailing municipalities and for the municipalities that have sustained the clean audits. And then we have also prepared what the Provincial Treasury is envisaging to do between the year 2023 and 2024, so that we not only sustain the 22 municipalities that have received clean audits, but that we bring the other the other 8 municipalities to a better audit outcome next year. So with the committee's request, and in terms of the MFMA, the Provincial Treasury, together with DLG, will present at a future session specifically what the Provincial Treasury has done. On the matter of clean audit, I must mention that clean audit is a South African standard which has been designed by the Auditor General, and it does set a basis for good financial governance. It says to the user of the financial statements and the annual report that you can rely, when a auditee receives a clean audit, you can rely on the fact that they have complied with all the GRAP standards, which is necessary to report accurately on the financial statements. You can rely on the predetermined objectives in terms of the targets that they have set for themselves, and you can rely that significant laws and regulations applicable to the municipality has been complied with. I think the area that needs to be improved is when council sits down and looks at the targets and the performance indicators, that is where more emphasis needs to be put, because it is only understanding what the performance indicator is and what the target is that you can actually improve service delivery. A simple example would be, if you have, as an example, 100 million, councillors needs to be aware across the country how much houses can be built for 100 million. If they understand that, let's say, for instance, 1,000 houses can be built, then they need to question why then in my target for a municipality, we're only putting down 500 houses as a target. So it is for the councillors, when they go through the IDP process, to actually study and investigate the performance indicators and to make sure that the targets that have been set can actually be purchased with the money that has been set aside for the performance indicators. I think that is the area where councillors can be much more vigorous in terms of the investigation or in terms of the interrogation of the performance reports that the municipalities puts in front of them for approval. I think at this stage, Chair, in terms of the interventions, in terms of clean audit, and then in terms of your further request for Provincial Treasury and DLG to come and explain to you what it is that we are doing with the 30 municipalities in the province, we look forward to a request in that regard, so that if there's any further questions, we'll be able to address it in a follow-up session. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adin. I welcome that request, and we'll get in touch with you in terms of when are you going to have that particular engagement, because it's going to take a lot of time, to engage in that. Thank you for your response as well. Can we give back to LG?
Good morning, Chair. Sandra Greiling from DLG. Just in terms of the comments made around the coalitions as well as the Section 139, as you're aware, yes, there are Section 154 support plans in place for Laingsburg, Beaufort and Kannaland. Both for Laingsburg and Beaufort, I think we are moving in terms of the implementation. Kannaland, I think we'll start moving from July onwards. We've had discussions with the MM on a way forward. I'd also just like to underline, as with my provincial colleague from Treasury, Aziz, that yes, we must always understand that we are 3 spheres of government. We are interdependent, and therefore each one of us have specific competences and responsibilities. Although we try and do this in the spirit of cooperative governance, there are very specific legislative measures that we have to follow. And obviously the presentation that the AG has given, we welcome it, because that takes us back to the drawing board. We can go and really look at our Section 154 support plans to see whether we should possibly strengthen the support to local government in terms of these. But yes, there are very specific levers that have to be triggered for a Section 139, and we consistently monitor our municipalities to see whether they do meet these triggers. So as Aziz says, if in future you want to have further information, we are willing to provide that to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DLG. I will give an opportunity to Salga to raise questions or deliver comments. Salga, are you there?
Yes, we are here. Good morning, Chair. I'm Kosinati September. In the platform, we have joined together with our political leadership. That will be Mayor Swart, Alderman Combring. I hope I'm not missing anyone. And we do have our Provincial Director of Operation Khalil Mulafi. Chairperson, I think the colleagues from Provincial Treasury, the PHE, as well as Dr. Khreling, pretty much spoke of our collaboration. But there was a specific request from one of the members that they be invited on the MPEC session in which the Provincial Audit HESA office partake on. Those are the MPEC session. We are going to extend that invite. I suppose Chair will do that through the Secretariat of the Standing Committee for our next session, which is scheduled to be in July. So shortly after this session, we are going to extend that. But what I got from her was that the session that should want to attend are those that are specifically where the HE partake on. And if that's the case, where we did have HE in our session, I will check with the office that deals with the impact engagement to see where the HE is presenting on the 6th of July. If it's the case, then we're going to extend the invite to this office. In relation to SALGA, the support that we provide to municipalities, we've got in relation to audit factors, we've got what we call the municipal audit support program. We have identified last year, using it as a baseline, 8 municipalities. The challenge that SALGA has is that we do not really have the legislative mandate as the other sector departments. To an extent, we do require that the municipalities that we adopt for our program, they are responsive. It becomes a voluntary approach. I'm telling you now, out of the 3 municipalities were pretty much active. And this year we had said, then listen, let's then continue with Oudtshoorn and Beaufort West so that we can have a baseline measure on what we've done last year as to what we'll do going forward and be able to identify our role in their audit outcome improvement rather. I think, Chair, it was to emphasize that our role in the audit issues. I hope there was no question specifically to SALGA that I might have omitted in responding, other than to emphasize in this committee that we do have our program in supporting our member municipalities. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. September. Is there something from your political principals? I see Mayor Swartz, your hand was up.
Thank you,
I
Honourable
see
Chair.
Thank
you, Honourable Chair. It's not a question, it's just an input from my side. And it's related to Honourable Darkmore's input also earlier. Chair, I think, and I said it, in one of our meetings and also our own visit to some of the municipalities mentioned here. I think we should be very serious about our communities out there. It's all about our communities who we serve as political heads and also as administration. In so many cases, we sitting in offices, we failing the poorest of the poor, we failing our vulnerable communities on what we envisage and what we should create in our own communities. It's all about, and we must admit it, it's all about political capacity in a lot of our municipalities in South Africa, and political capacity has a direct influx on on the administration, and that is, it's all about what are we doing, what are you doing as an oversight responsible organization or the provincial standing committee. What are we doing? Because then if we don't come up with plans. You know, we can have reports. We know what's happening in our community, in our municipality. Not only this year, we know this for years now already. And my plea and my input is, you know, when will we become serious as leadership and come up with consequence management? We can't allow it. We see it in our country. We see the plea. We see the poverty levels in our communities. And we are in a situation as leadership to bring that change. And that is my plea today to everyone in this room. If we not come up with solutions and stop talking about these things, come up with a plan, because otherwise we're going to all be part of, you know, what is happening in our beautiful country or in our municipalities. It's all about the people on the ground level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Swart. I think that was the last one. From my side, on behalf of the committee, allow me to convey our sincere appreciation to the AG for honoring the request to come and brief us on the audit outcomes of the previous financial year, and also to Provincial Treasury and to the Department of Local Government and to SALGA for also always honoring our meetings. And I believe this engagement is not the last, but there will be many more engagements, you know, regarding the state of our municipalities in terms of their finances. So we saw that we get our basics right. So, and I believe that every question that was posed here was for the betterment of those particular municipalities that we were talking about. It's never to disadvantage any municipality, but it's to how can we as the standing committee strengthen the hands of such municipalities. And a lot has been said about the top 3 municipalities in the province that has not been performing that well in terms of their finances. And ours is to make sure that we strengthen their hand, and we will definitely, you know, do everything in our power to make sure that, you know, we do whatever is expected from us to make sure that they actually turn the corner. And, you know, this particular report also serves as a foundation to help us to say what is it that is going wrong and how can we actually correct those things that are currently going wrong. And from my side, then I would say thank you very much to the presenter and to the guys for their responses. And from my side, then I would allow the members to stay behind, and then I would allow the AG, PT, SALGA, and DLG to be excused until next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye, Chair.
Thank you. Bye-bye. John?
Yes, Chair.
Your Honor, is still here? Okay.
I am.
The next point on our agenda, colleagues, the next point on our agenda is that we are just going to deal with the minutes of the 25th of April. Can you fly them, John?
But Chair, where is it now? Where is he now?
Call him by the name, he'll come out.
No, sorry, Chair, wrong one. There we go. Is it visible, Chair?
Yeah, I can see them. Colleagues, just make sure that your name reflects on the minutes and it's correctly spelled as well.
I was looking for the O now in your surname, Chair, when you said make sure it's correctly spelled.
Yeah, go to page 2. Page 3. Colleagues, can I get a mover for the adoption of the minutes?
Chair, I move that we adopt the minutes.
Thank you very much, Member
Chair, second.
Maseko. Seconded to that. Thank
Seconded,
you, Member
Chair.
Marie. Jabulela, thank you very much. That deals with the minutes. That was the only set of minutes. Then the last point on the agenda is the resolutions and actions. Is there any takers for resolution and actions, colleagues? I see Member Marie. I see Member Maseko.
Thank you,
Continue,
Chair.
Member Marie.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I was interested in the AG's explanation on how they measure compliance with ICT. Essentially, they said that they are checking whether the respective department, or sorry, the respective municipality is adhering with their own term set in terms of ICT compliance. And so I would just be interested if we could get a more holistic explanation in terms of which municipalities applied, and generally what are the requirements being set by municipalities in terms of ICT. And I ask this with our own province having recently experienced a cyber attack, but also because this phenomenon is increasing. And I would like to know really whether the requirements being set are sufficient for the digital age that we live in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member. Member Maseko.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, can we just to put an item on our program to get maybe from the department or AG or SALGA, their engagement with the impacts in the municipality, the day, so that we know in advance, so you know, we are always our program overpopulated with the oversight. So if we get in advance, then it makes us to be able to see which ones can we attend to, just to be observers or to partake in those engagement. And another one, Chair, if we can get the information about the staff component in the political offices in different municipalities, in all municipalities, to look at that also, just the information in writing. I don't know how to put it, but I tend to believe you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah, Johan is going to put it nicely.
Yeah, if we can get that from municipality to municipality, in all municipalities, the political appointees, how many, which municipality, and so that means it will be Speaker of Diewaterskloof, how many staff in his office, the mayor, how many people in his staff that are political appointments. Thank you, Chair.
Noted, Chair. I've got it. I've got it like.
From my side, Johan, if you go to slide 9, there is a lot about the impact of irregular expenditure incurred. I think I just want more. I would just for the committee to be given more, because there's about 19 municipalities, and it talks to about 33 billion. Then it talks about 4 municipalities. It talks about 96 million. Then the other one, 9 compliance, 18 municipalities. Then it talks about 16 billion. And the impact not yet assessed is in 10 municipalities, talks about 21 billion. So if we can just get more detail in terms of slide 9, that would be much appreciated from my side. Yeah, and yeah, that's all from my side. I just want more information in terms of that.
Thanks, Chair.
Member Dagmo, are you still online? Colleagues, those are the resolutions and actions. Then from my side, thank you very much to the members for availing themselves and for your positive contribution in this particular meeting. And to Johan, Candice, and Mfundo, it's highly appreciated. Thank you very much for always being there, you know, to cover us from behind the scenes. From my side, have a blessed day further. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.